Her story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil right.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
You're listening to Riff Worship, the podcast that attempts to answer the age-old question, what makes a riff? Why do we care about riffs? Talking about albums that feature some of our favorite riffs, talking to people who love good riffs. I'm one of your hosts, Austin Paulson. With me, as always, are my friends in music, Justin Swindle, Dylan Adams. What's going on?
Oh, not much. Dylan, how you doing?
Good. Get to talk about a record I really like today.
Yeah, it worked out this way.
It did. It did work out just that way.
I believe it'd been on the list for quite some time. So
it has.
When the opportunity presented itself, we just had to take it. But
when I don't mean to cut you off, but like when we got the link of, hey, let's do an Unearth record, it could either be the Oncoming Storm or like 3 in the Eyes of Fire. It's like, oh yeah, we're doing In the Eyes of Fire. It's been on the list for almost 4 years now.
Sick. Well, I definitely want to ask why we're doing that in a moment, but I'll kind of preface this by saying that one of my favorite aspects of doing the show over the past couple of years has been getting to connect with like-minded people from here in the States or all over the world. I've been kind of following this guy's podcast for quite some time, the Pitch of Discontent. He's one half of that podcast, covering alternative metal, hardcore punk, music of all kinds, really. He wears a lot of different hats. He's a writer. He's an academic scholar. You might have seen some of his work in Bandcamp and Spin, Brooklyn Vegan, Exclaim, No Echo, and many, many more. His recent work includes a chapter in the Routledge Handbook to Metal Music Composition titled Conceived Through an Act of Catharsis, the Phenomenological Allure of the Breakdown, which breaks down the breakdown from a contextual and psychological perspective. I am, of course, talking about Owen Morawitz. Owen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Boys, thank you very much for having me on. Likewise, first time, long time. I've been watching the show, been listening to you guys kind of chop it up and talk about records that I like. And I guess, when I was sending out the feelers for the publication of this volume and my chapter, and I was like, who do I know in my like little circle of stuff would be keen on this? And you guys were the first people that I sent stuff through. And I guess like when we started talking, Austin, and you were like, well, let's do like a riff worship. Let's talk about a record. Unearth were pretty much the first band that came to mind for reasons that we'll get into throughout this episode. But In the Eyes of Fire, I think, is the most interesting record in their catalog for a number of different reasons. So to hear Dill be like, we're going to talk about this one, I'm glad I picked the right one, is what I'm saying.
It could have been either of those records, but like totally. 3, because it is so different. And we'll get into that. It was like, oh yeah, we have to do this one.
Well, before we do, and I definitely can't wait to discuss it. Oh, and I maybe for those who may not know your background, I know I've listed a few things. Maybe you could just tell a little introduction about yourself. I'd love to kind of get into your backstory and like how you got into underground music and, how we're, writing like, like academic level, like journal stuff on the breakdown is pretty cool. So, just tell me a little bit about how you kind of got into this world.
Yeah, it feels weird, I'll just say, to be on the other side of this because I'm so used to interviewing other people. So like having it flipped on me is like kind of cool. I guess like I started going to shows and like my first kind of like hardcore show and like metalcore show was in 2005. So I'm not sure how old you guys are. I feel like I'm maybe a little bit older, but like 2005 is when I graduated high school. So it was like a real turning point year for me, like getting out of school, becoming a young adult. And that coincided with finding this form of aggressive music. And like before that, I was into, like pop punk, and I was listening to some emo stuff, but like nothing super heavy, lots of new metal, just like a kid in the 2000s, right? But then I had a friend of mine in that very last year of high school put me onto some records. He gave me The Opposite of December by Poison the Well, This Is Love, This Is Murderous by
Oof.
Bleeding Through, and then The End of Heartache by Killswitch Engage. And to my teenage brain at the time, I was like, what the fuck is this? I thought it sounded like death metal. I didn't have a context for what death metal even sounded like, but I just thought like, oh, that must be it. That's what people are talking about when they talk about death metal. So like I had to prime my brain to really kind of get around it. It wasn't like an immediate love. Like I kind of worked at it to kind of realize what was going on. Um, but it's something that's kind of been with me ever since. And I'm turning 37 this year, so like finding those records when I was 17 has been, a 20-year labor of love up until now. As for like the music writing and stuff, I was contributing to like zines in my city. I was doing like street press type stuff when street press magazines were still a thing. And then kind of dipped in and out of music journalism, but really kind of started it in earnest in 2015, writing for different publications and all the stuff that you listed off there, Austin. But I think maybe leading us into kind of this chapter, which is like bridging this academic work with my kind of background in alternative music, didn't really happen until COVID. I finished my bachelor's degree. I got an honors degree in literature and philosophy, so that's kind of the academic background. But I have obviously just been going to shows and loving music that entire time. So in COVID, like most people, I didn't really have anything to do, and I started finding call for papers from different academic groups that were working on chapter volumes or some kind of like book manuscript project. And I just started like cold emailing these different professors and people and just being like, hey, can I contribute? Like, I'll put together a proposal. I can be a part of this. And in a very roundabout way, that is kind of how this chapter came about.
What was their goal? Like when you saw this, maybe like posted or listed somewhere, like what about it kind of spoke to you? Like, why the breakdown? Like what about it made you like, oh, I could, obviously you've been going to shows, but what was it about this book that you finally were like, okay, I can maybe come up with something for this?
If I had to be kind of like brutally honest, it was very self-serving. So like I was reading the description and it was very broad in its approach. It was like we're doing a volume on metal composition, all genres welcome, and it listed all of the main ones, like your doom metal, your thrash metal, new metal, whatever. But curiously absent was metalcore. And in my experience in metal journalism and in kind of academic circles, metalcore is kind of maligned and kind of forgotten about, not treated as seriously as I think it deserves. And I was actually working on, and still am working on, a full length book manuscript looking at metalcore specifically. So tracking the evolution from the early 90s all the way through to now, looking at scenes here in Australia, because ours is quite prolific, but also obviously in the US, in Europe, and other places. So I already had the bones of that manuscript proposal, and I was shopping it around to people and kind of trying to get some interest. And then this chapter, Call for Papers, came up, and I was like, maybe I can write something about metalcore. And I was like, what's the defining feature about metalcore? What am I trying to get at this book proposal? And it was mainly like the breakdown is kind of the key. And like when people talk shit on metalcore, they always talk about like it's got too many breakdowns or they just love breakdowns. They can't even write a good riff. And I was like, there's something here. Like I can kind of analyze this, see what's going on. Maybe I get it published, and then that helps kind of advertise more work that I would like to do for the eventual book manuscript. Maybe even go on some podcasts that I like to spruik my work. You know what I mean? So here we are.
Here we are. I guess too, like how do you approach something like that? Obviously we're all like very familiar with a breakdown, but how do you contextualize it? Like, how do you, you kind of like, I don't want to give too much away. I'll like kind of let you, explain, divulge the details as much as you like, but you kind of start very early. You start like pre-metal, essentially. You kind of mentioned the Beatles and, even some Black Sabbath. So where do you start? Like, how does this even go to paper?
I would say it was very difficult, and I had a lot of like once I got the initial proposal out, the proposal's easy. If anyone else has done a similar thing like this, like the proposal is easy. You knock that up in a day, you send it out, and then when you actually get someone to come back and go, "Okay, write this," then you're like, "Fuck." Okay, now I've got to like do the research that it takes to justify that proposal. And it took me a long time. Like I kind of had it on the back burner, didn't put enough time and effort into it. I missed a couple of deadlines. Apologies to my publishers for that. But what really kind of clicked for me, I think, was finding the work of David Huron, who has this great book about music and the psychology of like expectation. And once I found some theoretical work kind of outside of metal, so it was music related, but it's not like Huron's work isn't really associated with alternative music or even really rock music in general. Like it's briefly mentioned, but there was this framework that I was like, okay, this is really interesting. I think I can apply it to alternative music and to heavy music. And then how does it fit specifically with breakdowns, with metalcore? How can I make those two things gel? And then once I started doing that, then you feel this kind of spark of inspiration go off in the back of your brain, and you're like, okay, I'm onto something here. Like this is good. And then once that came, the rest of it kind of naturally followed, and I ended up writing the whole thing over a series of days. So it's like months of agony of like, I'm never going to write this thing. It's not going to be any good. And then once it kind of kicks off, it just kind of wrote itself. And then aside from the actual writing stuff, the other part was just listening to lots of breakdowns and listening to lots of bands and trying to work my way back as far as I could go to kind of see like, where does this really start? And outside of like blues and like dance music and stuff like that, which is, there are definitely breakdown elements associated with those kind of genres. Like for me, when you're talking about rock music, it kind of starts with the Beatles. And then when you're talking about like heavy music, it starts with Black Sabbath. So like once I got there, then I started working my way into the more modern contemporary subgenre sounds, and it was fairly easy once I had that blueprint.
Who were some of your like breakdown influences? What bands have you always been have been like your favorite breakdown bands?
Ooh, that's a great question. I mean, I know it feels kind of easy, but Unearth are probably one of those bands. Like, I just think they're really, really good at writing breakdowns. They love a staccato riff. They love a synchronized headbang. All of the different drummers are great drummers in their own way, and the drumming is really key to kind of having the rhythmic kind of component of a breakdown like actually hit and work. But outside of that, I don't know. I think for an Australian band, I think Parkway Drive are probably like the biggest ones. Like their early work was huge for our metalcore scene here, and their first couple of records have just some stupid breakdowns on it. So like I think those are probably the two bands that I think of. And I'm very much a mid-2000s metalcore guy because that was when I came up and when I started going to shows and when I would start moshing myself. So like that nostalgic thing for me is right around that 2005, 2006 sweet spot.
Obviously going back to the very roots of what kind of would influence what the breakdown was going to become. And I mentioned off air to these guys that I always go back to Creedence Clearwater Revival. They have a song called Looking Out Your Back Door, or Looking Out My Back Door, that goes to like a quarter time at the end of it. And it's like, oh, okay, there it is. Like there's the thing, there's the pacing, there's the feel. But I kind of and I kind of hit in the same time frame when it comes to a lot of the metalcore that I listen to. You know, you mentioned Killswitch Engage, Bleeding Through, Unearth. You know, I think there's a huge difference between bands that write and utilize a breakdown like Unearth do, and then there are bands that write purely for the breakdown, right? Like you could almost separate that into two different camps, and they each have their own qualities to them. They each have their own positives and negatives to them. But you look at like a band like this, and you look at a band like Bleeding Through, which you mentioned before, and then you could even throw in, they're not as breakdown heavy, but you look at a band like Darkest Hour and those three metalcore bands, right? Like those are three kind of a part of the initial wave of the metalcore bands, and you could probably throw in like 18 Visions with like Tower of Snakes and the whole nine. And it's funny because these are the bands that did not reach the heights that a Killswitch Engage did, or a Parkway Drive did, or like A Day to Remember, bands of that size. Bring Me the Horizon's another one, right? And it's weird that these bands and you know, our topic today didn't see those heights, even though they're writing catchy riffs. They have great breakdowns, like, you know, crowd moving breakdowns, things that could, you know, cause somebody to run through a brick wall. Cause that's the feeling, right? That's what the breakdown's all about. It's that anticipation, you know, just doing my final listen to this record. Like it was all there. It felt like hearing this band for the first time at like 14, 15, 16 years old.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's funny we kind of talk about Parkway Drive, and they are kind of the biggest Australian metalcore band by a significant kind of margin. But, you know, reading through like old kind of magazine articles and stuff that I have lying around the house, like they shout out Unearth as like a huge inspiration for them. There's photos of them in their old practice space in Byron Bay, and I'm pretty sure Winston, the vocalist, is wearing like an Unearth hoodie, you know, and they used to cover Endless. So like
Oh, wow.
there's DNA kind of sewn into that band that comes from Unearth. And in the kind of notes that we have here for the recording, I kind of put that they're like the working man's metalcore band. You know what I mean? Like they've been around since the early 90s. They have kind of spanned this breadth of metalcore and all of its various evolutions for like 30 years. They're still a band, still relevant, but never huge, never completely dropped off. They've always just kind of been just doing their thing. And I think that's why they're such a representative band for this discussion, because not only are they like great and the breakdowns are sick, but they've just been around this entire time. So like they really kind of encapsulate that whole evolution.
Do you remember like the first time you discovered this band, or like, you know, what is your relationship like? Personally, this is the first time I've ever listened to an Unearth record, truth be told. Like I've
Whoa.
never, so this, you know, I knew Dylan's a fan. Dylan certainly talked about him, and I knew he would probably have an opinion on what record we were going to talk about today, but I'd love to know what your relationship with Unearth is.
Yeah, so funnily enough, the first kind of like metalcore show I went to was in 2005. I saw Every Time I Die headline. The tour was called Good Music for Bad People, which spoke to my 17-year-old brain. I had no idea who Every Time I Die were, never heard of them. And I was going because Parkway Drive were the main support. And this is right around the time that Killing with a Smile came out. It was when Parkway were really starting to pop off and people were taking notice. So they were main support on that tour. Funnily enough, the Amity Affliction were the local opener on their first EP, like real old head back in the day shit. But I rocked up there as a 17-year-old kid to an all ages show. It was the first time I saw moshing. It was like a real like game changer for me. I was like, I don't know what the fuck any of this is, but I want in. Like, how do I get in? And then I ended up working at that venue, and it was just like a underground like nightclub kind of venue in Brisbane, where I was living at the time. Heaps of shows rolled through. Hatebreed played there. I got to see Dark Tranquillity play there. Bunch of different bands, Ringworm, all sorts of stuff. But there was a girl that worked there. She was one of the bartenders, and I was the glassy. I was walking around just picking up everyone's glasses. And she was a huge Unearth fan. And she put me on to Unearth, and the first record that I heard from them was 3 in the Eyes of Fire. So that was quite literally my gateway record into Unearth. And then over time, I obviously worked my way backwards, and the Oncoming Storm is probably my favorite, I think. But In the Eyes of Fire is definitely the first one I heard. And then a year later, 2007, is when I started doing a lot of music journalism stuff. So wrote my first album review, did an interview with Candice Casclain from Walls of Jericho while they were on tour in Australia. And that tour package was Unearth, Walls of Jericho, and a great metallic hardcore band from Australia called Mindsnare. Not sure if you guys are familiar, but they're probably our greatest unsung Australian export. Like the definition of like your favorite band's favorite band, like they're the goats. So I went to that tour package to interview Candice, and then saw Unearth play, and it was on the tour of this record. So 2007 was after 3 came out. So yeah, it would have been them playing all of these songs as well as all the stuff in their back catalog. So that was my introduction, both on record and in a live setting.
So Dylan, when I brought forth that Owen was wanting to do an Unearth episode, and we had the Oncoming Storm and this record, why 3? Why this record over the other?
First time I saw the band was on this tour cycle. They had a show in between 2 big tours close to where I lived, and it was just them. It was them and like 2 local openers, and it was playing tracks from this record as well as the Oncoming Storm. And it was one of the most bonkers experiences I've ever had in my life. There were at one point in the show, there were more people on the stage than there were in the crowd, just bodies everywhere. I had owned the record. I bought it right as it came out because I had the Oncoming Storm for quite some time at that point and really enjoyed that. I think the first time I saw Unearth was the Zombie Autopilot video. Saw that, really enjoyed it, harmony guitars, so on and so forth. And this record just sounded so dry and aggressive, like even more aggressive than what came before it, and maybe even what came right after it too. I mean, just in your face. The production is right down the middle. Like it's all intense the entire time. Like it's there's like 2% of this record that is a let up at all. And that's not including the instrumental at the end of it. It was just so dry and aggressive. And as soon as I saw that, I went, yep, that's the one. Like the Oncoming Storm can come a little bit later because it's a little bit more nuanced. I would love to dig into that and kind of explore into the early Boston metalcore kind of scene, which we've dug into in the past. But this one just being this weird outlier of a record for this band, we had to dig into it. And to what Owen said earlier, the band still fucking shreds. I got a chance to see them last year, and these guys are got to be pushing 50 at this point, and they're still jumping off amps and all sorts of shit's going on. Like, it's wild. This band's fucking crazy. And this record's intense.
Just to jump off what Dill said, like it's interesting because I think like the production aspect is really kind of key into why this sounds so different. And like we can probably get into the details of it a little bit later, but like they have such a storied connection to that Massachusetts scene and working with Adam D from Killswitch. So then to kind of do this as like the second record on Metal Blade and to get Terry Date to come in and do production, I think really kind of just like puts this different kind of vibe and tone to the record. And you're quite right. It is kind of dry. Like there's no real bells and whistles. There's no fancy shit going on. Like it is just a raw Unearth record. And probably the closest I think to what like their live experience is without any kind of like tour, I don't know, backing or anything like that.
Swindle? Any history with this band at all?
I saw him in 2009. I saw him in Nashville at Rocket Town with Amir, Born of Osiris, and Impending Doom.
Yeah.
Wow. Very 2009 tour package right
Yeah. I think it was for the album The March.
Yeah.
And I think I'd only listened to that album because I was going to the show. I listened to it.
Gotcha. Have you revisited their catalog up to this point? This has been kind of dusting it off a little bit. Huh?
It's been a while. Yeah.
Well, with that said, I guess we should maybe get into some history, where we just kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this record. As we mentioned, Unearth from Boston, they were formed in 1998 off of two bands, .04 and Second Division. .04 featured Future. I fucking hate this goddamn thing. .04 featured Future Unearth members Paul Buzz McGrath, Mike Rudberg. Am I getting that right? Rudberg?
Yep, that's it.
All
Rudberg.
right. Chris Rover Rubicki and Ken Susi. And so they had a 96 demo and an album called Mercury of Reason. Did anyone get a chance to listen to that demo?
I listened to the demo this morning and it was cool, but I couldn't find a copy of Mercury of Reason. I saw people talking about it. I was jumping through Discogs. Someone's probably put a Dropbox link in here somewhere or something. But no, I couldn't find the record. But the demo's cool.
Yeah, I'd say I probably like the music part of it much more than I did the vocal aspect of it.
for reasons that will become evident very shortly. But yes, I agree.
So we have essentially all the instrumentation of this band in .04, and then in Second Division you have vocalist Trevor Phipps. So two things kind of happen. .04 pretty frustrated with their singer, from what I understand. They just got sick of him. Trevor Phipps seemed pretty gung-ho about Second Division, but he wanted their more hardcore centric guitarist to implement some more metal inspired playing. And so then you have Ken and Mike kind of doing a side project and maybe writing some more stuff that they wanted to hear. I guess the initial goal was not to have he didn't anticipate having any of the .04 people in it. They just kind of showed up. They just showed up to practice. But I'm sure they were playing around with each other in the scene. Ken was basically pestering Trevor to join the band every day, and he I guess eventually gave in, and some of the stuff they were working on really, all right, maybe this is something I'd want to lean forward into. So they wrote 4 songs and then started playing as Unearth. I couldn't really figure out what the origin of the name was, but I did find their first show, $6 bill featuring Buried Alive, Diecast, and All Out War. So $6. Yeah. In that crowd, Red Chord member and future Unearth drummer, Mike Justian. Did I get that right? Hell yeah. All right, we're going to see. All of this is so new to me, so I'm glad someone knows what I'm talking about. So he was actually in the crowd for that show. He went to go see All Out War and kind of mentions just being really blown away by the whole experience of seeing that band for the first time. They kind of note their influences being Testament and Pantera, Metallica, Megadeth, all the classic ones. And of course, being from this area, you're going to pull inspiration from some of your local, maybe the older kids. Overcast, of course, we've talked about on this show. Cave In. I'm sure it was hard to escape a lot of that stuff.
Converge is probably another big one as well.
Yeah. The one thing that kind of stuck out to me though, as maybe, I feel with some of these Boston metalcore bands that we've talked about, there's some not to say it's not present on this record, there's definitely some Melodeath influences that are taking in. This band kind of almost leans into, two bands. There's Iron Maiden and Crowbar. And there was a quote in here by Ken: "Be more like Crowbar. They're fucking awesome. There needs to be more bands like Crowbar because they're the best band to ever exist."
Man, what a telltale for this fucking podcast, right?
Yeah.
That's up there with there's I think it's a Uranium interview from like '05. It's the Chimera dudes. I've mentioned this a couple times in the past where they're all in Crowbar merch, every single one of them. And they're like, so what are you listening to? And it was Mistress Julia, and she's interviewing them. And I think it's Mark from Chimera. He's like, Crowbar is the heaviest band of all time or something. And that's the end of the episode.
But I hear it so much on this. And then, I mean, even Trevor's vocals, like at times I feel like are pretty Kurt Winstein like. And and then of course there's like the harmonies do like lean into that melodeath realm, but then again there's like songs on this record that are like very clearly like Adrian Smith and fucking Dave Murray would have been like, oh yeah, those guys are there playing it. But I don't know.
Yeah, I was reading through the notes that you kind of compiled for this, Austin, and there was that quote. I'm not sure if it's Ken or maybe it's Trevor. Someone is like, Iron Maiden meets Crowbar.
Yes.
It's kind of like what we were going for. And I'd never heard that comparison until now, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about their sound and the different elements that really stand out. Because I think you listen to a song like Zombie Autopilot from the Oncoming Storm, and like there's so much like harmonized guitar work going on there, but like it's not really European melodeath. It's kind of more like new wave of British heavy metal. Like it's leaning into that Judas Priest and kind of Iron Maiden type sound. So like once I saw that written down, it kind of clicked in my head, and I was like, oh no, that makes a lot of sense. That's what they're going for.
So we get a demo in '98, and this is essentially also their first EP. I guess there was a Endless Fight Records basically took that and put it out on CD. What I feel like I've seen this label come up a few times, but I don't. Dylan, you're familiar?
Oh, I know nothing of the label, but
okay, you're laughing.
I'm laughing because there's a quote from an interview, or I can't remember. It's in the resources there, but they're talking to Buzz about like, what's the first, what was the name of the label that you put your first release out on? And he's like, I was going to say Endless Fight, but that's one of our fucking songs.
So yeah, the first EP, Above the Fall of Man, basically just the 4-song demo. They also did a split with the North Carolina-based vegan metalcore band Undying, which came out in 2000. It also features current and former members of Catharsis, as well as Jimmy Chang from Sect. Shout out Sect. We love Sect on this podcast.
Hey.
This was originally not even supposed to have Unearth on it. It was supposed to feature 18 Visions, but for reasons unknown to me, Unearth managed to secure that spot. And their song that they that appeared on this release would also appear on the debut record, the Strings of Conscience. What? Sorry, I misspelled it in the notes, and I was like, that's not right. I put the Stings. For some reason. So I was like, I'm about to fuck this up.
I don't want to gloss over. I know we don't want to spend too much time on this, but the band Undying, if anybody's never trekked and listened to that band, please do. If you're a fan of any of the early Black Dahlia Murder records, listen to Undying, or like that, or like Old Prayer for Cleansing or stuff like that. Like it's there. It's in their DNA for sure.
It is the Strings of Conscience, right? Am I fucking that up?
Strings of Conscience.
I always thought it was the Sting of Conscience.
Maybe it did. Like I noticed I looking at it, I'm like, maybe I just
on Spotify and the album cover, it is the Stings of Conscience.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay. So, I always thought it was Strings as well too.
Shit.
What's funny is you thought you were gonna fuck it up, and by thinking you were gonna fuck it up, you fucked it up.
There it is.
So as I said, the Stings of Conscience. The Stings of Conscience, released January 16th, 2001 through Eulogy Records. That is an Atlanta-based label founded by John Wiley, or John Payne. He's like a straight-edge metalcore, hardcore guitarist. I might know him from bands like Tension, Organized Pain, Culture, a ton of them. He also ran a label called Hand of Hope Records. They worked with a lot of similar bands like that, but they also worked with bands like Set Your Goals and some like early Newfound Glory records as well. So just kind of all over the place. Trevor Phipps kind of mentions this as like a defining moment for the band. They kind of found their sound here on this record. It helped get their name out there. And of course, as we've kind of mentioned, this band is a workhorse. They toured like hell around it. So they're selling CDs all across the states or the world. So it really just kind of helped push them. This is also the first time that they work with guitarist Killswitch Engage and Price is Right winner Adam D. So hell yeah. Long-standing partnership.
There are some great stories regarding Adam D in this band, but the one that always sticks out to me is the Unearth guys they're drinkers. They stopped off somewhere, literally got a block of ice, went to Adam, were like, can we put this on the record? Let's make it more cool. Let's put it on the record. And Adam has stated somewhere on that record, there's a track of just a block of ice with two mics facing at it for no reason other than just boring entertainment. And he's then been quoted as like, yeah, I just remember a bunch of little tiny guitar players running around my studio.
Yeah, they really do seem like a natural fit. Like,
yeah.
I remember watching the Alive from the Apocalypse documentary. Like, I remember getting a DVD copy of that back in the day and like watching it on a real DVD player, not fucking YouTube. But I remember that documentary just like really capturing the fun kind of natured vibe of the band. And from watching like the Killswitch DVDs and seeing the behind the scenes of that band, like Adam is like the chaos gremlin of that band, just like constantly like getting up to shit and kind of like, being the fun guy while the rest of the guys are being like the serious guys. And then with Unearth, like they're all fun guys.
Oh.
So then he's just like the natural fit for them.
Yeah, for the sake of time, there were a lot of stories that I found. I mean, there was a Decibel magazine article from like 2006 with just a load of like, what's happening? Like, I don't like, man. But they do this debut record. After their debut record, they recorded like 3 tracks with Adam D that were intended to be on a split with the Belgian hardcore band Liar. There were issues with Liar's label that prevented that from actually happening. Eulogy, their contract with that label, that required them to put out an EP. So essentially, they're touring all the time. They don't have any time to write like another full length to meet the deadline, I guess. And so they essentially say, all right, we're going to use these 3 songs. We re-recorded one from our demo, and that essentially ends up on the Endless EP in 2002. And that fulfills that contract as well.
Can you really ever trust a band named Liar? I don't think you can. I think
or Belgians, like two for two. I think it kind of. I didn't find it in my kind of very admittedly half-assed research that I did to supplement the incredible research that Austin did for this episode. But
now we can keep talking about that. I don't know. No, I'm saying.
I would suspect that Metal Blade were probably sniffing around the band at around this time. And because like you said, like they toured like hell, they were road dogging it out on the first record. And it seems to me that like not only was this a thing to kind of like fulfill the Eulogy contract and kind of like tie that all up, but I would imagine that Metal Blade were probably already kind of like, DMs weren't a thing then, but like sliding into the MySpace inbox or whatever the fuck the equivalent is at this time, the AOL email inbox or whatever. But yeah, I imagine that the Metal Blade connection was starting around this time, and that they were kind of getting wind of like, okay, we can go to something a little bit bigger and better, and then kind of level up what we're doing.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know how that kind of came about, and if there were any other labels that were interested in the band as well. I did see one Lambgo article that kind of suggested that they might even have done the sophomore record with Eulogy. They were kind of teasing it like, oh yeah, we're gonna do it on this label we're already on, and then then Metal Blade comes into the picture. Before that does happen though, Rover leaves Unearth. This was like his last release with the band. I noticed that they kind of put out like a little post. Hey, we don't have a bass player anymore. We have no one to fill the spot. They posted their AOL email, just like, hey, message Mike here, and we'll go through it. And so then you have John Slow Maggard, who joined the band. John was a member of another hardcore band in the local area called Flatlined, which also featured Mike Martin of All That Remains. He had previously filled in with the band during a 2-week summer tour with Poison the Well and Martyr AD. So it's kind of, we already road tested this guy. He clearly knows the songs. Easiest thing.
Apparently Slow is also a very good musician. Not just like, oh, he's, plays bass in these metallic hardcore bands or whatever. Apparently he is a very well vexed musician, which is evident on the Oncoming Storm and in the Eyes of Fire. He does all the piano tracks.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
That's Slow.
Okay.
Shit. Well,
it's rumored, and this is in the Alive from the Apocalypse DVD, that he played keyboards in a Dream Theater cover band.
Oh, big
I
old
can see
nerd.
that so works. Yeah, totally. And it's a little bit off topic, but I guess we'll kind of get into it when we hit In the Eyes of Fire. But he's a like semi-professional gambler as well.
Yeah.
And like in the documentary, like he definitely comes off as like the old head that's been like roped in for like one last band, and he's like in there just like cruising around with these like kind of younger guys, but he seems definitely like more weathered, and he's like playing blackjack and shit. And it was just like such an interesting dude, like super funny.
That seems like an opportune vice to have if you're going on tour.
I believe it created some problems down the line. Yes.
It is also drummer Mike Rudberg. Damn, we're getting through it. It's also Mike's last release with the band as well. I don't know, like it seemed a lot of details maybe fuzzy. There's a lot going on. The band kind of imploded like mid-tour. They were playing like a South by Southwest showcase, and they just said Mike lost it and he played naked during the South by performance.
I read this and I was like, I need to know more. Like,
yes.
The vagueness of that description like really stuck with me. I was like, define lost it. Like,
how do we get from not like, I just want to know how you get
what exactly. Yeah.
Even in the DVD, it's very vague, and all the guys have the same story. It doesn't change. They're just like, oh, he said he was going to play naked, and we turned around and just saw this flesh and went, oh, he's naked. And then he disappeared after the show. They're like, we couldn't find him. And he rolled back in and closed and was like, I can't do the band anymore.
The lawyers got to him. The media training got to the guys.
The NDA, yeah.
So, listen, y'all all tell the same story.
So he leaves the tour. Then Buzz, also due to some personal problems, again, I don't know if it's just this band touring so much, maybe it just gets to you. Buzz leaves the tour. That would be my like, all right, like hey, maybe we just cancel the rest of the dates and go home. They did not do that. They were like, we're gonna get some fill-ins. We're gonna keep chugging along. I mean, there's stories of like their van fucking up and breaking down, and the exhaust coming in from the back, and people getting sick, and just the merch guys taking money. So it was just like a series of massive amounts of bad luck. I don't know why they like it would have been. I'm like, I'm going home. We like why even try? I don't know. Anyway,
yeah, and there's an interesting like point of divergence here, right? Because like that series of shit happening to you, like losing your drummer, losing another guy in the band, all of this shit kind of like cumulatively piles up, and you still don't throw in the towel. You kind of like persevere, you play the shows, you kind of keep things moving. Like they could have just called it a day, and then you don't get the Oncoming Storm, you don't get In the Eyes of Fire. Maybe they're not even a fucking band anymore now. So like that could have broken a different band, but not on Earth. They persevered.
We talked about plenty of bands who've broken up for far less. So
100%.
But as Owen mentioned earlier, this all pays off. The record, the EP, the touring. Metal Blade Records is very, very interested, and so offers them a deal which kind of like persevered for a good almost decade. Kind of resulted in 4 albums. Hell, I mean, even Trevor Phipps had his own label, Ironclad Recordings, which he started in 2002. They had sort of like a distribution deal. And I believe, what's the guy from the Red Chords other label?
Black Market.
Black Market. There you
They
go.
basically signed them both at the same time for that distribution deal. So there you go.
Yeah, I feel like if Metal Blade wasn't sold on the band before all that shit happened,
Yeah.
all that shit happened, they still managed to like work it all out. Metal Blade was probably like, oh, like they're in it for the long haul if they're willing to get through all this shit. We're gonna get our money back for this.
Yeah. There's a quote in there too about how dealing with eulogy, kind of like, I think Trevor was looking after a lot of the band, like admin at the time. And like, obviously with him starting up his own label and stuff, that was something that he was like good at and wanted to do. But I think like managing the band and their kind of relationship with eulogy helps kind of get them to a point where they could obviously negotiate like a very kind of good thing with Metal Blade. The imprint stuff comes later, but like clearly they know what's up and they know like how they're not going to get like ripped off, which is something that happens around this period of time, like all the fucking time. Like, I'm not sure if you guys have talked about Victory Records on the show, but like that's like a whole thing of just like label guys just like ripping off bands and all that sort of shit. So like, I think, yeah, it served them in good stead that they had enough experience that they could get approached by a label like Metal Blade and kind of like pull that off. I also like, before we move on, I think it's worth noting that like for this point in time, kind of there's 2 kind of signings that really kind of stick with me, which is Killswitch doing records through Roadrunner and Unearth doing records through Metal Blade are really kind of 2 points that show a little bit of prestige elevation for metalcore in terms of like traditional old guard established metal labels kind of realizing that there's something here and kind of taking these bands that have been in the underground in different regional scenes and kind of giving them the leg up to the big leagues essentially. And you know, eventually Killswitch do like the major label jump and all that sort of stuff. So like that's further in their story. But yeah, I just think for a band like Metal Blade to sign a metalcore band like Unearth is kind of like putting this air of legitimacy on it and being like, no, this is like a good band. Like you're allowed to listen to this. You can like this. Like breakdowns are good.
And it says a lot too, because to be fair, like Metal Blade didn't sign a ton of metalcore bands even after Unearth signed. Like they had a small amount, but none of note. Like it was Unearth, and then you know things got progressively heavier throughout the years. But like Metal Blade kind of put all the eggs in the Unearth basket when it came to metalcore.
They did, yeah.
They
Other
really
than the
did.
imprint.
Yeah.
BMA was like all
yeah.
metalcore.
Well, right. And like even that style, like the red chord adjacent metalcore is so different than this, because that's more of like off time signatures and less more traditional breakdowns a la Unearth, more like skronk and all that crazy grimy stuff that we're into as well.
I haven't written an academic journal, but I believe the technical term is skronky.
Strong. It's the technical term. Correct. Yes.
So they signed to Metal Blade, and of course, with that, they released essentially their breakout record, The Oncoming Storm, in 2004, June 29th. So, you know, definitely a showcase in growth. I know this is a very, I think we've all established on this show that we're, the 3 of us at least, are not very lyrically minded people. But from what I understand, it's a very politically driven record. Obviously, as we kind of mentioned with The Blackening and some of the other records of this era that we've talked about, you're talking about what's going on around the world. And so this record was, definitely doing the same.
It was a Bush era metalcore, kind of like to a T. And what's funny is like I remember listening to The Oncoming Storm and In the Eyes of Fire, you know, when they came out, right around that mid 2000s point, and not really making that connection at all. And I think that kind of just comes with youth, and maybe like I wasn't thinking about larger political or cultural things, but like going back and listening to the records, because I've been listening to Unearth pretty much consistently for like 2 decades. But like I listened to, a song like The Great Dividers, and I'm just kind of like, wow, this is like almost like a protest song, but with breakdowns on a metalcore record. It's like kind of fucking crazy. So yeah, I think it's cool that Trevor, I don't know, found an outlet for that sort of stuff with this band. And I think they do it tastefully enough where it's like not too on the nose. Like it is pretty clear. Like once you kind of like think about it in that way, you're like, oh, right, he's definitely talking about that sort of stuff. But like, I guess 18-year-old me listened to that record and was like, I don't give a shit. Breakdown good.
It is funny because, I always go back to us talking about Ashes of the Wake, which is, there's no questioning what that stuff's about. Like it's all there and it's got 4-letter expletives all around it. Right. And then you look at the Oncoming Storm and it's much more almost poetic in nature of how he's communicating these feelings and what he's communicating about. Whereas Randy, bless his heart, is just, hey, fuck Bush.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing they definitely note on this record as well is that they had kind of the resources and the funds to really sit with, what they were actually recording and writing before, classic young band thing. Well, we wrote it, put it out. This is an opportunity for them to really kind of take a step back and look, okay, like what do we like about this? What actually needs to be here? So this is like the first record where they really got to do pre-production. And of course they worked with Adam D again. This is also a record that saw some sales as well. They kind of reported 120,000 scans, maybe their highest selling record in the States. I don't know if that's to date, but it was a big selling record. It was a success for the band for sure. And they were, I'm sure, able to get, with the backing of a label like Metal Blade and with the sales of this record, I mean, they're appearing on the final volume tour, like Slipknot, big tours.
Yep. Ozfest.
Yeah, Ozfest. But they also made it to Australia kind of off the back of that record, which kind of at the time, like there were a bunch of different bands from like the hardcore and metalcore scenes, like making the jump over here. And they were one of them to really kind of come and play shows here in Australia, which is notoriously expensive and just fucky in general to do, like even now. So like 20 years ago, I can imagine it was probably worse. But yeah, like I think that's kind of a big thing for a band like that, to like not only tour across the States with As They Lay Dying and to do shows like Ozfest, but then to like go overseas and go to the Southern Hemisphere to play your shows is kind of cool.
Yeah. Is there like, and excuse my ignorance, but is there like maybe a comparable kind of touring festival for this time in Australia, or like what would be something kind of similar?
So the biggest festival at the time would have been the Big Day Out Festival, and that was kind of like a multi-city, kind of like all genre type festival. But like Hatebreed played Big Day Out a couple of times, and a bunch of other bands. But there isn't anything comparable to like Ozfest, which is very like genre specific. Like we didn't really have anything like configured around specifically alternative music until probably the late 2000s. There was a festival that started in Perth in Western Australia called Soundwave. And it started, the first few years, it was just a regional festival. And then once they got successful enough, they started doing multi-city date tours. And that was probably the biggest festival package of that kind up until, I want to say 2015, 2016. It all kind of went bust and went bankrupt and was a whole messy thing. But for that period of like the late 2000s and early 2010s, like it was the festival. Like Metallica headlined it one year, Green Day headlined it another year, Deftones played.
We talked about Baroness. I feel like they
that would make
appeared
sense
on that.
Yeah.
I saw Baroness play at a Soundwave, so yes.
Perfect. So we have this record. A couple years later, August 8th, 2006, they released their third record, In the Eyes of Fire. A quote from Trevor: "This is our fastest, darkest, angriest record to date. We were in a bad place eternally at this time, and it showed with the music. I will stand behind this album until the day I die because it was such an emotional experience for us all. We fought, we hated each other, and we wrote some dark, angry metal." I believe it.
Yep.
It comes through on the record. So yeah.
I think just based on the research that I did for this, they definitely are taking some of those like political kind of stances and talking about those issues that are kind of going on around the world. But now they're kind of applying it like, okay, how is it affecting us personally? They're also maybe taking issues outside of that in their own personal lives. So I think Trevor's definitely tapping from a place that is very vulnerable. And yeah, he just sounds so angry all the time.
There's absolutely no let up on this record vocally either, which is the Oncoming Storm had some cleaner vocals on it. And seeing the research of them stating like, we wanted no clean vocals on this record. They were just like, that's kind of being done a lot right now. We want this to be the angriest and darkest thing we've ever done. So like, and it's not like, it's Trevor just like pushing the mic levels as hard as he can the entire time. And the man is mad. The man is mad and is upset, and he's going to tell everyone.
And I think that kind of has to do with their production choice. Obviously, we mentioned that Terry Date, instead of Adam D, was chosen to work on this record. He actually wasn't the band's first choice. They were in talks to get Ross Robinson
which blows my fucking mind.
Nuts.
We need to talk about this. Like, as soon as I read it, I was like, holy shit. We could have got a Ross Robinson Unearth record. And I just like sat here at my desk, just like disassociating and imagining like what that record would have sounded like. That's crazy.
Yeah. For those maybe just unaware, Ross has worked with a lot of new metal records. I think he's most known for the Korn self-titled record from 94, Soulfly's self-titled from 98, Roots in 96, Sepultura record, Machine Head, The Burning Red, 99, and then of course Slipknot, their self-titled debut, and Iowa in 01. So some massive records.
But also, I think like his new metal stuff is very, very important and kind of like a leading figure in kind of like crafting that sort of sound. But another kind of point to mention is that he helped produce at the Drive-Ins Relationship of Command. And there's a bunch of like famous quotes of him like going to their shows, seeing how batshit crazy at the Drive-In were in performance. And then he basically approached them and was like, let me work with you. I want you to basically like take down all of the shit that I have that I am responsible for. Like this whole new metal thing that's happening and like the Limp Bizkits of the world. He's like, fuck all of that. Like we're going to ruin that. You're the one to do it. Let me help you. So I just think he's clearly a guy that's like clued in to like trends and like how things change in the musical landscape and like being an active figure in those changes. It's very interesting to me that he was in conversation with a band like Unearth, because like, what the fuck is he going to do with Unearth? Like, I have to know. I have to jump universes and like find that universe.
I know the stories of how he would work with bands and what he would do to bands when he would work with them. There's old self-titled Korn recording stories about him just like throwing shit at John Davis in the vocal booth to get some sort of performance out of him. I'm like, it would be real interesting to see something lobbed at Trevor Phipps in a recording booth, like based off that, because he's angry already. It's like, come on, like, what are we going to get from this? And Ross is a very, very chaotic and organic sounding producer. I mean, all those classic records he's done, like they all are organic sounding. There's a vibe to them. There's kind of a hair to the record that you hear on every single one of them. Like, they're not hyper polished. they're pretty fucking crazy sounding records. And to hear something that organic on top of this set of songs that this band is recording would just be so fucking interesting.
I think like another interesting thing is that like with that quote from Trevor, how he's like, you know, we were fucking mad at each other, like we had a lot of internal tension going on, right? Which comes through on the record. I think maybe they had heard some of those stories that you mentioned, Dill, about Ross and his process, and I think perhaps they were like, we can't take that. Like that might be the shit that actually like pops things off and breaks us. Because then you read these kind of quotes about the experience of recording with Terry, and Terry is like the exact opposite.
Yeah.
He's like the stoic kind of guy who just kind of sits there. And there's quotes that Austin kind of compiled here where he's just kind of like, you know, you guys sort your shit out. And when you're ready, when you're ready to record these parts, we'll record these parts. And like he didn't really fuck with the internal dynamic of the band at all. He didn't really push them to do anything. He was just kind of like, I'm here to make this sound as good as I can, but you've got to give me the material. So I think that's like a completely different dynamic to what Ross would have brought to the band, I imagine.
I feel like he probably had to at least learn that in the Pantera sessions.
Oh my
You probably
God.
don't want to try to push those people too hard to do what you want them to do. You probably got to let them do what they fucking want to do.
Yeah, 100%.
So they recorded and mixed this at Studio X in Seattle. I learned that this was briefly owned by the Wilson sisters of Heart for like maybe less than a decade during the 90s. But for the most part, I think maybe it started out as a studio where they were like recording stuff for like commercials and stuff. They then purchased it from a couple and then sold it back to this couple. So there's like so many amazing records I believe we've touched on before. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Soundgarden, Super Unknown, Pearl Jam, Vitology, Mad Season, Alice in Chains. I mean, the list goes on. And then come to find that there was actually some film scores recorded here as well. Fucking Army of Darkness, 10 Things I Hate About You, Dennis the Menace, Big Fish. I don't know. That's just kind of like all of these things kind of maybe happening just in different studios or around the same time.
Dennis!
It's a big studio. It's Metal Blade like going, hey, all the eggs in the basket for this record. We know what the Oncoming Storm did. We know the success of that. We have a lot of confidence in you guys. We're going to pair you guys. Who do you guys want to record with? Terry Date? Fuck it. We're putting the money towards it. You know, we know because Trevor's an admitted Pantera fanatic. And of course, like hearing Terry Dates involves like, okay, yeah, we're going right in with this. Let's do it. Let's see what he can do for us. Matter of fact, there's a great quote of like, there were just a lot of Coors Lights drank on the recording of this record. And that's kind of
it's the crowbar coming back.
That's the crowbar Pantera kind of throwback. And there's a great shot of like Terry working with Trevor on vocals, and Terry's just sitting at the board, just very relaxed, just kind of watching Trevor lose his mind in this room that's set up like a living room. And there's just one solo bullet just sitting right there on the counter, and it's like, come on.
Hell yeah.
Brian Slagle was like, you hear how crisp that Dennis the Menace soundtrack is? I mean, we need to get those boys in that room.
Yeah.
So we've pretty much gone through so much of this band's history and the recording process, and what was it like to be in a band like Unearth?
Yeah.
Shall we get into the bulk, the tracks of it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do
Fuck. It gets right into it.
Yep, it sure does.
Oh my God. This record, as we've said multiple times, there is like no room to breathe whatsoever. Like it just goes. And it has like, for the most part, it has two speeds, fast and faster. That's no in between for the most part.
I think my favorite riff on the album maybe is like a minute 45 seconds into this first song.
It's a good first song. I mean, there's just so many different influences. I mean, we've talked about some of the Melodeath stuff, but then there's like, I think what I really appreciate too is this band's ability to transition as well, like on a dime, because they go from like this like incredibly fast and intricate, melodic thrashy riff into just a bouncy metalcore riff too. Like, I don't know, it's just all over the place.
They are probably one of the best to do the transition in like a metalcore context. And I think like we'll kind of get into this a little bit when we talk about like breakdowns and stuff, but like the ability to like build tension, like their build ups and stuff are so good. And this record is full of them, and just like these really good placeholder moments to kind of like get you pumped up for what's coming next. And they know how to do that without it being too abrupt or too cheesy or corny or anything like that. And there's like very little filler on this record, almost no filler by design. But yeah, I would say in agreeing with Justin, like this Glorious Nightmare is like probably like a top 3 Unearth song for me. Like it is like so like quintessentially them and everything they represent. And it's probably my favorite like 1-2 pairing on any Unearth record, like going from this Glorious Nightmare into Giles, which is my favorite Unearth song of all time. Just it fucking rocks. Like I just think like sequencing is so important, and I talk about this on my show all the fucking time. And like these guys know exactly what they're doing in like doing like a good song and then putting like a deep cut banger song like directly after it to just like make sure you're peaking the whole way through.
This record is sequenced fantastic. Like it doesn't really, there's no let up, right? Like there's no room for air. Like it is intense for 36 minutes of the record. You get the instrumental at the end. But as Owen said, the 1-2 punch of this Glorious Nightmare and Giles, and just completely they both basically begin the same way, just intense. It's an angry scream. It's a snare roll. And speaking of like the snare, the off place snare the entire time. And then Mike Justin or Justin's recording on this album is pretty fucking gnarly. It's his one record with the band. Sorry, his second record with the band, and it's like he knew this was probably going to be it, and he went all out. I mean, there's points on this record where there's fills on top of fills. Each song kind of begins with a snare or a drum fill or something. Like it's just right into it, and there's no fucking click track on this record. It's all recorded just straight in, and it's like, Jesus, how are we doing this? You guys talked about the transitions on this record. The one thing of note that's done really well on this record is that it's not the song serving the breakdown. The breakdown just happens to be this release in the song that fits very well with the song. I mean, there are actually tracks on here that don't have breakdowns in them. Sanctity of Brothers does not have a breakdown in it. A traditional one. It's got kind of that groovy kind of thing going on it. And that's a single. That's like a thrash riff the entire time.
I think that's my favorite song on the album.
Oh my God. That and Imposter Kingdom to me. Imposter Kingdom's like this almost death metal style song.
That's my favorite track on the record. I just can't get over that riff.
That is the angriest Trevor is on the entire record. That breakdown that hits in the middle where he's just shoving the mic down his throat. And it's like, God, he's just pissed. This is a great workout record. This is a record you can like do all sorts of shit with, and it's going to pump you up. I know I'm generalizing this entire thing, but it is such a fantastic fucking record, and it doesn't get old. It's not like, it's dated to 2006. I think that production helps with this.
Yeah.
But back to what Owen stated about sequencing on this record. As I said, it's great. But there's another major record that came out the same year that isn't sequenced that great. And I'd like to hear kind of Owen's take on this. Killswitch Engage's As Daylight Dies has terrible sequencing. It's all disjointed in how it is. And then you get a record like this by, friends of these bands are friends. And this record's just in the gate, it's 11 songs. It's 10 straight in. You don't have just no frills. No frills, no fat, nothing.
Yeah. I on the note about As Daylight Dies, like a notoriously front heavy record.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever listened, or I probably have listened, but I haven't gone back to like the side B of that record in close to 20 years. You know what I mean? Because it's just like so front loaded. And this record is not that. like the deep cuts, the stuff on the back of the record has some of the best tracks. If we're talking about like favorite songs on the record, I'd also like to shout out "This Time Was Mine." I think like it has probably the best like build up section going into the breakdown on the whole record. And I mentioned before how Unearth really loves like the staccato riff, you know, where they're picking up the guitar and like shooting it like a machine gun. Like that is like such Unearth shit, and it's all over this record. But This Time Was Mine has like the best example of that. And then it has this real interesting kind of like post breakdown bit where Mike is like doing some like groovy shit on like the bell on the ride and like doing like stuff that sounds like, I don't know how else to describe it, like the freight train kind of riff of just like ding 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 ding. Like love that shit. There's so much like cool little groovy stuff, little off time accents, just real like good stuff that helps like break up the breakdown and kind of put some variety in there without fucking with the formula too much. And I'll kind of say it right now, and I'm interested to know what you guys think, but I think he, as in Mike, the drummer, might be the secret sauce that makes Oncoming Storm and In the Eyes of Fire like so good and kind of like held above in their catalog. Because I just think like personal shit aside and like inner band turmoil that eventually resulted in him leaving the band, like he's fucking on these records. Like the drums like are so locked in, and I think like the rest of the band like meets him at that level, and that results in like such good material.
It's crazy to, you know, in the amount of times you go back and listen to it and just catch what he's doing, whether it's like, yeah, as we mentioned, like these crazy fills, or like, I mean, his legs must be like chiseled. Like some of the double bass stuff he's doing to kind of like help accentuate the riff or the breakdown, like it's so unique and so creative. Like some of the arrangements he's coming in, and I don't know, Swindle is, as a drummer, is there anything that you caught that, you know, interested you or kind of surprised you about his playing?
There were some parts that I like specifically picked out that I thought were like cool, like March to the Mute after the breakdown. There's like a weird thing on the splash cymbal or something that's like almost a polyrhythm, but it only lasts for like 1 second, and then he like goes back into the craziness. Also, there was like one breakdown in This Time Was Mine, actually. There are, in the big breakdown, there are like 2 or 3 really cool fucking drum fills in the big breakdown part.
Yeah.
But the drumming is really crazy. Yeah, just in general.
To add to that, on Mike's drumming on this, he's not doing the traditional thing under breakdowns that I think a lot of drummers would normally do, right? Which is where you lock the kicks in with the note. He's doing some weird off-kilter shit with his feet where there are gaps and there's breaks and a snares in place of it or something. And like, it emphasizes the weight of those breakdowns even more. There's a lot of like feel changes he's doing throughout all of these tracks that are just like, if you don't really hone in, you won't know it. It's there. And it's tremendous. Like, it's almost like Shannon Lucas joining the Black Dahlia Murder. It feels like a completely different band on these 2 records. And I am a fan of this band's entire catalog. There are albums I prefer over others, and I don't think the band really matched this intensity until 2014's Watchers of the Roll because that is like a great later career record for that band. But you know, his drumming, I will say the one thing that really bums me out about the production of this record is Slow is buried in the mix, like virtually unhearable. There's one point in March of the Mutes where there's a bass slide. Yep. It's meant to take the place of an 808, right? And there's certain points in like Sanctity of Brothers, you can kind of hear it. He's kind of got this grindy, distorted sound a little bit. And like, it is a bummer, but like this record's so guitar heavy. I mean, there are layers of just multi-track guitars on there. And you, speaking of March of the Mutes, the opening, like menacing layered harmony intro of that's very like Testament, very South of Heaven kind of intro going on there. And I mean, Slow's doing what he's supposed to be doing, which is holding the fundamental for a band like this when you've got two guitar players that are like losing their fucking minds and running across stage and crowd surfing to the bar and taking shots and all sorts of stuff while the band's playing.
Owen, since you have the chapter about breakdowns and we kind of covered this album because of the breakdowns, do you have a favorite or a favorite number of breakdowns on this record?
Yeah, I think I kind of picked out 3 tracks as like the standouts, and we've kind of covered them all already. But like, I think this Glorious Nightmare has an impeccable kind of breakdown section and kind of like call and response vocal overlay to it. And I think like Trevor is one of the most underrated vocalists in metalcore because I think like he has such like clarity and such great kind of like cadence and flow. Like his mid-range is like super like legible, so you can hear what he's saying, you can chant along, you can like sing what he's saying, but then he can also do a low vocal here, he can do like great highs, like he's got a lot of good dynamic range. But in terms of breakdowns, like I think Giles is my favorite. And I've said this on the pod and to like various guests before, but like it has probably one of my favorite 2-step riffs like ever. And like I know it's weird because like as like a hardcore guy, hardcore obviously has like lots of 2-step parts and lots of 2-step riffs. But like if you had to put a gun to my head and you were like, what is the best 2-step part of all time? Like I'm picking the Unearth one just because like every time I hear that riff break in Giles, I'm just like, fucking hell, like so good. It's crazy. And yeah, I think This Time Was Mine probably has my favorite breakdown passage on the entire record for all those reasons that we were talking about with like the build up and stuff. But to kind of jump off to your point, Justin, about like the stuff that I talk about in the chapter, like the theoretical framework that I use to kind of talk about breakdowns, the David Huron work that I refer to, like it comes or it highlights kind of 5 stages of the psychology of expectation that we use when we listen to music. So it talks about imagination, tension, prediction, and then release, and then appraisal. And the prediction and the appraisal parts are kind of like key to understanding like how it all works. And why I think it applies to breakdown so well is because of the stuff that Dill was talking about before, which is like when Mike is doing all of these like weird kind of like off time bits, that's fucking with your sense of prediction and appraisal, because you're thinking like, okay, I like breakdowns, I've heard a breakdown before, I know what a breakdown sounds like. So then when you're listening to something like This Time Was Mine and the breakdown is like 90% of what you expect, but then just like subtle subversions and flicking things to a different way, that ticks the little like the phrase they use in Huron's work is primordial functions. It's like a little trigger goes off in the back of your brain and you're like, oh, I didn't expect that. Oh, I'm a little bit surprised. And in this context, that's a good thing. But in like the animal kingdom, like that shit could get you killed. And that's why our lizard brains are primed to hear that and be like, oh, what's going on there? Why is that surprising? So that's kind of what breakdowns are doing. And then like you guys know, like you've been to shows, you've seen breakdowns that result in chaos.
Yep.
You've probably been to a show where you're like, someone might fucking die in this pit. Like there is a primordial function to the live performance of a breakdown that once you experience it, when you hear the stuff on record, you go back to that moment and you're like, oh, I remember when I caught that foot to the face, or where that guy beat the shit out of me in the middle of that breakdown. So Unearth are a band that kind of tick all of those boxes for me. Like I remember the shows, I remember being a mosher back in the day, too old for that shit now, but like it brings all of that kind of flowing back to me.
I mean, there's just so much to love about all the breakdowns on this. I mean, I listed a few myself. I mean, when you mentioned This Time Was Mine, I mean, again, like the Kirk Winstein crowbarisms come back to me. Like just before that breakdown, there's a line. I couldn't hear quite all of the lines he was saying in this album when I was listening to it, but I've lived and died 1,000 times was like, oh, that's a Kirk line for sure. And then it just like goes right into it. But I mean, there's like, yeah, Imposter's Kingdom is fucking great. There's a awesome breakdown in Blood Dry. And then, they're not all the same. There's variation. They're really, I mean, both guitarists are just really showcasing their talents. I mean, not just in the breakdown aspect, and I'm sure we'll get into it with. I mean, it is a breakdown record, but it's so much. There's so much more going on too. Swindle, Dylan, I don't know if you have any like standout breakdowns from this record.
My two favorite were Sanctity of Brothers. That was my favorite because it is like a subversion of the kind of normal breakdown. There's like, it's not just like the or whatever. And then Imposter's Kingdom, there also is the subversion of the breakdown there because they like throw the weird off time notes like dead ass in the middle of the breakdown, and then they do like a little like melodic run out of the breakdown right into the next part.
So Giles, obviously, like just the whole ending sequence with the call and response, like Owen was the rectify my name bit, just repeated over and over. It just gets bigger and bigger. And it's probably the most like straightforward kind of breakdown part of the whole album. The kicks are locked in, the whole thing, and it's massive. It's a single and it's just huge. The Devil is Risen. Around 2.5 minutes in, there's a part where it starts to build up to it, and there's a whispered "The Devil is Risen," and it kicks right into this just pummeling fucking breakdown with all these dissonant harmonies and everything going on. And then we've mentioned it multiple times, the breakdown in Imposter Kingdom, like just with Trevor just like forcing the mic into the red. I also want to bring up too, like Terry recorded him with an SM58, and then the mic Owen and Austin are using to do all the vocals.
Oh,
like that's it.
Yeah.
That's purely it. But most of the track is done with just a live SM58. So it sounds very organic. It sounds real. And I think it adds to the aggression for all of this. But like the breakdowns are varied. Austin, you said it. Like it's not just, hey, here's the same kind of 4 bars of, these open notes. There's nuance. These guys know how to play. And this is a record that's a result of a band that has toured constantly. This is tight. I mean, it's evident. They went, yeah, we're not recording with a click track. And I'm sure Terry's like, great, I got to edit all this shit somehow. And then he gets in, he's like, well, I dealt with, 15 years of those drunks from Texas.
But no, Dylan, you're absolutely right. You said it. I mean, it's tight. It's precise. For how furious and like, just absolutely like, like fast paced this is. It's so melodic. Like this is very clearly like a heavy record, but it's also so melodic. There are so many parts that stick out in your brain just because like they know how to write great songs. And, whether that comes with just a really good riff or some of these, like there are parts on this record. I don't really feel like there's maybe like one true traditional solo on the whole record. The other stuff, it's just, it sounds like it might be, but it's really like just cool like scale runs or like lead lines that are just parts in the song. But like it insane, absolutely insane.
To highlight the melodicism that you brought up, all the songs are tuneful. Like Trevor is not a singer, and he never will be. Although there are some later records where he does play around with it a little bit. But this record's tuneful. It's melodic. It's very much in the sense of those early kind of thrash metal records where there was melody all over it, but it was still this barked, commanding vocal. And I go back to like Ride the Lightning, and I go back to like Master of Puppets, where 90% of those records are Hetfield just doing this pitched scream that still has this melodic quality to it. And that's what Trevor's doing here. And, you have these great kind of melodic hardcore embellishments throughout the tracks too, to add some anticipation and add some release after the breakdowns too. And he's still doing this very tuneful, almost preacher style vocal performance on top of those. and it fits so well. Like it checked all the boxes of this time frame for this band to be one of the at the forefront of this metalcore movement, or this new wave of American heavy metal movement, whatever it was called at this point. And they fucking prove it with this record.
So yeah, I mean, it doesn't really let up. There's some moments on certain songs where there might be like a little bit of a break, or maybe some like sparse kind of cleaner guitar. But I mean, you know, ending with an instrumental. I mean, we talked about the Mastodon record, like, and how fun that is at the end of like Leviathan. This is another really great. You just spent like, you know, 35 minutes of your life just getting absolutely fucking pummeled into the dirt. And then you get Big Bear and The Hour of Chaos. And I mean, you really get to sit back and everybody's just like really having a good time. Like Mike is probably the most subdued on this song. Like he's just kind of like in the pocket, like playing to the guitars here. But you know, there's piano. It's really great kind of conclusion to the whole record.
The closing, and Swindle know this really well, the closing track of Clients is very much kind of similar in vein to this. It's an instrumental track, very kind of like Crowbar-esque even. And the ending track on this has a lot of those kind of groove and kind of sludgier aspects to it. You know, it helps that these guys are, we didn't even mention this, these guys are using 7-string guitars. These guys aren't using like standard 6 strings and drop tuning, like just a standard scale 7-string guitar. They were probably one of the first bands of this era to do that and help influence what was to come. So like those lower tunings and those lower registers were really helpful in creating this environment. And it's really evident in this instrumental track a lot, with the huge soundscapes that you get and the huge kind of thick lumbering riffage that's in it.
Yeah, and I think like kind of ending on the instrumental is kind of like an inspired choice, because I guess like the kind of trope, or like the cliche, would be to put it in like the middle of the record to kind of help like separate your side A and your side B. But I think sequencing it this way and having it at the very end kind of helps the relentless kind of quality that we've been talking about, how it doesn't really let up. But now I've been kind of thinking about it while you guys have been talking. If you allow me to get a little bit meta with it, it almost kind of functions in a way that the whole record kind of feels like a breakdown in this kind of like framework that I write about in the chapter, right? Like you have this Glorious Nightmare and Giles, and they kind of set the tone for the record. This is the imagination component that helps like build tension. So you're like, okay, this is what I'm expecting. And then the rest of the record is just like all of these buck wild variations on that tone, and it's relentless the entire way through. And then you finish with this instrumental, and this is your catharsis and your kind of release and reward for making it through that onslaught throughout the entire record. So in a way, it kind of fits the theoretical kind of schema in a way, which I don't think they did that intentionally. Like I'm just overreading it, but I think it really works. Like it's such a good palate cleanser. It's a great way to finish the record. It shows them at their most like tuneful and melodic in a way that feels right for the record. It doesn't feel like tacked on or corny or anything. It's just, yeah, such a sick song and such a great record.
We definitely consciously chose this album because it fit your theoretical definition of the breakdown. Yeah. Definitely, we did that. Can you splice that into the beginning? Yeah, like edit that.
Yeah. There is too much ooga booga between the three of us to ever put anything together like that.
So they did embark on some, insane touring regimen. I mean, they played Ozfest again, 2006. They played the second stage. The album was actually released during this touring cycle. Ozzy was on select dates, Black Label Society, Atræ, Bleeding Through, and Norma Jean. I mean, they toured with practically everybody. I don't know if this was their first headlining tour, but Sanctity of Brothers in 2006, Bleeding Through, Terror, Through the Eyes of the Dead, Animosity. That's pretty cool.
Crazy, Bill.
To add something to that too, Metal Blade had such confidence, and Trustkill had such confidence in Bleeding Through at this time that they were playing small arenas on that tour cycle in the States. It was 50-50. It was a toss-up in certain markets, but I mean, think about that. Like they're doing smaller arenas, probably like 2,500 seaters, something like that at this point. And some of them were doing really well.
Going to Europe as well with like Hatebreed, did a kind of a US tour with Slayer. They did another UK tour with Job for a Cowboy and Despised Icon. The one of the main notes of like this touring cycle too is that Mike Justine actually left the band during the Demi Borgir, Double Driver, and Cataclysm tour. I don't exactly know what happened. They were just like, we're not going to air out our dirty laundry, but they were kind of saying that like a bunch of stuff went down between the two parties. Maybe they never really clicked that well on like a personal level. So they kind of naturally split. And so Mike actually did rejoin the Red Chord that same year. To finish the tour out, they actually got Gene Hoglan from Strapping Young Lad, Dark Angel to kind of do the rest of the tour, which would have been insane to see.
And I think it kind of speaks to what we were talking about before with like the pedigree of drumming on that record is like you need someone to fill those shoes. You get Gene in there.
Yeah.
Like just
the machine.
The
atomic clock.
The machine. Yeah.
So in the DVD that they did, the Metal Blade did for him, they talk about calling Gene. They're like, hey, we're going to be running through in a couple dates, yada, yada. You think you could do it? He's like, yeah, sure. I can take a shot at it. Learns the song in like days. Learns the set in like days.
They said that. They said it wasn't like he left. They actually called him preemptively because they knew they were going to like basically like say, hey, it's just not working out. So but that's rad. And then, so I don't know if on the next tour they did for the album, it would have been Darkest Hour, August Burns Red, and Suicide Silence. This was like a US tour. They got Derek Hirschwell on drums. He remained until 2010. So they basically spent a good portion of this time writing the next record, The March in 2008. And then they actually also, with that record, went back to working with Adam D as well. And so we kind of complete the discussion on 3. But I will say, to kind of end this, Owen, what do you think the importance of this record is? Obviously, like, you're a big fan of this band. Down the road, whether 5, 10, 20 years, what do you hope people will get out of this record? What do you think the legacy of Unearth and In the Eyes of Fire will be?
Probably kind of a summary of all of the points that we've kind of touched on, right? Like, I do think that they are a really kind of like working man's metalcore band. And I think you can listen to their entire catalog and there aren't any crazy dramatic shifts in genre or tone. Every record sounds like an Unearth record. They all have, a couple of higher highs and maybe some slightly lows, but I don't think they have a bad record. I don't think they have any duds. I think, you can have personal taste on which one works for you. I think the legacy of 3 is that it is a shift for them in production, in getting out of their comfort zone, and it does kind of provide this really interesting snapshot of a band like Unearth at a point where the scene that they're a part of is experiencing like a huge amount of popularity and growth. So like being able to resist some of the more corny trends that were going on with metalcore at the time is kind of a representation of who the band is. And, not to kind of take shots at anyone in particular, but, I think it's kind of telling that like you could contrast this record with the self-titled 18 Visions record that came out in 2006 to kind of see like the evolution of another band, a peer band in their space, kind of leaning too hard into the bit and kind of like not really kind of pulling it off. And I think like, I love 18 Visions. Tower of Snakes is probably one of the best breakdowns ever written. So like no shade to them, but like you can see like taking risks and kind of like not necessarily getting the payoff that you wanted from record performance, sales, etc. And I think they, Unearth that is, took risks for this record and got that payoff. Like, it's a great record, probably one of the highest points of their catalog, and it showed them, you know, like getting that payoff and putting the work in.
I agree completely with what Owen just said, and great mention of that 06 18 Visions record as well.
Couple of tracks, like not a dog shit record by any
right,
by any stretch,
but it's
like,
it's, you know, Austin will edit this out. It's the butt rock record. You know, we
Yes,
know that.
for sure.
We're calling them out. No,
We're tagging 18
you know,
Visions in
and
this clip, baby.
and I think they'd admit it too. But you know, that same year
totally.
you've
they,
got
they would own it for sure.
absolutely, and that same year you had Bleeding Through's The Truth that came out, which is this wildly crazy record. But I think the lineage of this band, not just this record, is that you're not going to have the next wave of further aggressive metalcore, deathcore, metallic hardcore, whatever it is, without Unearth. You know, the phrase Unearth breakdown was used a lot amongst all my friends. It's like, oh yeah, that's an Unearth breakdown. Like, you knew it. It was you could just hear it. You don't have the research. You don't have this like take over with deathcore bands. Use the use of 7 strings, of down tuning. You don't have the Whitechapels, the Suicide Silences of the world, the Carnifexes. You don't have those without Unearth. And some people may say, hey, fuck, why did they do that? And some people may say, great, that's the next continuation. But you don't get that without Unearth. 3 was it was a shot. It was a shot for the band to go, all right, we've done this thing for so long. How can we take ourselves to the next kind of plane, right? How do we take ourselves from a hardcore influenced metal band to almost a metal band by nature? You know, we've played Sounds of the Underground, Ozfest, you name it, all these huge festivals. We've done it. We've co-headlined these huge bills and everything. And let's write a record that we can play live and just push ourselves. And they did that. Like, even with the March is a fantastic record, but it sounds very close to maybe what the Oncoming Storm was. Tonality wise, I don't want to say it even sounded like the same songs, but the legacy of this record is, I think it's always going to be overlooked by the Oncoming Storm. But for every Oncoming Storm, you're going to have a 3 in the Eyes of Fire. You have to have that balance. And not, you know, having one record that you're known for, but also having 2 that you're known for, and that second one being arguably the most aggressive one you've ever done, is a statement. And these guys are still holding true to that. They still make great records, as you said. You know, there's, 4 to 5 songs on each record that they play live, and they still go through with it. And like, the band is still visceral live. Like, they have fun, regardless as to who's in the band, who's not in the band. Like, they're still going out. Trevor's still the mouthpiece. Buzz is still doing like dives off of these, double stack 412s and somehow not blowing his knees out. It's an intense band. It's an intense record. It's a perfect record to me. Like, it really is. I wouldn't cut much, if anything, off of this record.
All right, now's that part of the episode where we like to share some recommendations, some things we've been listening to. I just got 2 this week. Kind of talking about this era of like metalcore, especially this region in particular. I thought it might be a good way to recommend Upon Stone. They have a new EP out, End Time Lightning. I think it's like a joint release between Century Media and their kind of previous label, Creator Destructor. It's like 2 new songs and then a Manowar cover. But it sounds great. I think we're kind of like maybe bridging the gap between the last record, Dead Mother Moon, and whatever they're doing next. Mm-hmm. I think they definitely take influence from like this era of like hardcore and metalcore, and then also just like leaning into that like wild Melodeath stuff that really great. I mean, shit, there was Brian Farrell was on the record. So check that out. Second one, Weeping Sores, the Convalescence Agonies, that was released back in May through Voidhanger Records. This was like a random find. It was like a recommendation by our friends in Wretched Blessing. Kind of some wild like death doom featuring members of like Pyron and Scarcity and Sepitus. I'm not really sure on that, but really great record. I was really surprised by it. Just maybe like a 2-piece based out of New York. So I can't really say much other than just check it out and have fun. So
that shit's wild. So I have 2 this week. Starting out, keeping in kind of the aggressive metalcore, deathcore kind of vein, I have Psycho Frame's debut full-length record, Salvation. Sorry, if I can get this all out. Salvation Laughs in the Face of a Grieving Mother, which was released on July 25th through Sharp Tone Records. These guys are from Florida. It's deathcore. It's nasty. It's gross sounding. It's all the different things you could do to describe that type of band. They have great artwork. They've put out a couple really good EPs prior to this album. I actually bought one of the Meteor Gym Records exclusives that they did. Fantastic, quick release. If you definitely want to get any sort of angry vibes out, this record's the one to do it. And the second one is an album, one of my favorite albums from last year. It is Atræ Bilis' Aumicide. What a fucking perfect record. David's the best. Atræ Bilis is the best. Looking forward to whatever they put out next.
My only rec is the new record from The Armed. The Future is Here and Everything Needs to Be Destroyed. Came out August 1 from Sargent House Records. Features a friend of the show, Meg. Chaotic, artsy. Who knows? I think Patrick Shiroshi's in it, right?
Oh yeah,
doing some sax.
Hell yeah! I get to see him on this Sumac tour. So
yeah, I wish I was gonna fucking get to see him.
Tough luck. Our guest of honor, Owen. Please, I would love to hear what you've been listening to as of late.
Yeah, I have a couple of things to shout out, but I will say that Upon Stone EP fucking rules. The Manowar cover rocks, and I love their whole like hardcore dudes playing Melodeath, but also really being into like 80s goth, and they just like are all dressed in the film clip like they're in like the Lost Boys or something. Like no notes. Aesthetically, it's great. I featured that on my show as one of my favorite releases of the year so far. So love that you're shouting that out. To Dill's recommendations, that Psycho Frame record is psycho. It's fucking stupid. For like a deathcore supergroup, like they really are just like pushing the envelope of intensity and really like in a lot of the ways about stuff we talked about on this episode, like trying to subvert your expectations when it comes to that sort of stuff in a way that I think a band like Suicide Silence definitely did when they were getting their come up of just like really pushing the intensity envelope and doing weird, crazy shit with it at the same time. So I second that recommendation. And to Justin's point, I love The Armed. I don't even know what the fuck you call that band. Like they are so many different things. I bought one of their records. Shit. Might be the Only Love record. Came out in like the 2010s at some point, but I bought it off Bandcamp and I've been on their mailing list like ever since. And it's one of my favorite things because they just send like crazy emails, lots of cryptic like promo stuff. So like whenever they're on an album cycle, I'm like, hell yeah, we got some weird inbox shit from The Armed. So that's, I haven't heard the new record, but I'm sure it's going to be batshit. So I'm excited.
Apparently, Kurt Ballou was behind like the premise of The Armed. He was like, whoever the main person in The Armed was, Kurt Ballou was talking to him and was like, isn't it whack that like music a lot of times depends on like who's playing it? And the main person in The Armed was like, I should just like make a band with random people doing random things on random albums. So now like no one ever knows who really is in The Armed, and they got like 30 people in the fucking band that might be on one song. Like, yeah.
Yeah, they're like the like funkadelic of hardcore.
It's amazing.
There's always like 20 people on stage. Everyone's doing a different thing. You never know what to expect. Yeah,
My brain went Zappa.
In terms of recommendations, I got a couple of things that I think you guys will be into. So there's a band that are doing really well here in Melbourne. They're called Terminal Sleep. Have you guys heard of these guys at all?
I heard you recommend it on your show and checked it out a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're kind of like a local Australian band that have really just kind of got the pop in the last like year or so. So they signed to Nuclear Blast, which is huge. They've already done 2 European tours. So they've played in like the UK and Europe. They just got back from doing like the summer festival circuit over there. But they don't even have a debut record out. They only have like 2 EPs. So it's kind of crazy to kind of like already be at that level. But the live show, fucking phenomenal. They're just really dialed in, very intense. And it's very much like not metalcore in the traditional sense or even like the Unearth sense of what we're talking about. It's more like metallic hardcore, like
Sure.
lean, really straddling that line. But there's still pit parts, there's still groovy shit in there, but very intense, very sick band. So they have a new single out called They Circle Below. My wife Paige and podcast co-host and I are in the video where some of the faceless, cloaked extras that are in like some scenes. I don't even know how much of that footage made it in, but like we were there for the shoot, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, people should check that out because that band is going to be huge. I suspect that their album is going to be like a really big deal when it eventually drops. And then I've got 2 EPs to shout out. So it was kind of fortuitous that we were talking about this record and Dylan shouted out Undying because there's a band from Melbourne called Blood on My Hands. I'm going to feature them on the show. And by the time this is edited and put out, I will have edited my own episode with them and put them up. But they have a new EP out called Death Through Devotion. It's coming out through Kingpin Records, which is a local Melbourne label here in Australia. And then Third Impact Records in the US are doing some distro for it. But this is like real deal early 2000s metalcore in the vein of like Undying, Martyr AD, Morning Again, just like real hard metalcore shit that like has no time for bullshit or corny stuff. Like it's just like all the hits, like great breakdowns, a spooky instrumental, spoken word interludes, like all of the stuff that is like really, really sick about metalcore that we've kind of touched on in this episode. So by the time people see this, that whole EP should be out, so you should be able to go stream it, go check it out. Really cool band, and I think people will fuck with it.
Hell yeah. Check it out. One more recommendation, The Pitch of Discontent. Don't be a chump. Our problem, we only get through one record a week. So if you're looking for, I mean, there might be no one busier in this kind of corner of the internet going through all sorts of music. I mean, and really just, if you listen to that show, you're going to find something you like. Owen, thank you so much for taking all this time to chat with us about this record and really just kind of dive in and nerd out. Can people find any, I know there's like a newsletter and obviously people should listen to the podcast. Is there a way for people to check out this chapter? I'd love for people to see it.
You kind of have to buy the volume to get the chapter. And I don't want to like ruffle any feathers with the publisher, but I will say, if you find my social media and you hit me with a WhatsApp, we might sort something out. It might fall off the back of a truck, so to speak. So just hit me up. Yeah, you can find the show on Instagram. YouTube is the main place where we upload episodes, but we also have audio stuff on like Spotify and Apple Music. Just type in The Pitch of Discontent into Google. You'll figure it out. It's fine.
It's a lot of fun. You and Paige got a great thing going on over there.
Thank you, dude.
Congratulations to you both as well. That's so, exciting with everything going on. And, just to still be like doing this is while, big life stuff is happening I know it can likely be hard, but yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be thank you. It's going to be difficult for sure, but yeah, I'm excited. I'm not getting any younger, so gotta dust off the dad bod at some time. You know what I mean? So we're getting there. But thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you so much for having me on your show and kind of just fucking with what we do. It means a lot, and I'm super excited to kind of have people watch this, and also just to nerd out with you guys about metalcore and breakdowns. It's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I would do this anytime. You want me back? Open invitation. I will be here.
Hell yeah.
100%. Please come back anytime. You can follow us at Riff Worship Pod, Instagram, Twitter, riffworshippod@gmail.com. It's all there. For myself, for Dylan, for Swindle, for Owen, you've been listening to Riff Worship. We'll be back next week with something else. See ya.
See ya.